I think we have been interacting since yesterday. So today I'll talk less, and I would invite my esteemed panelists who are going to share their word of wisdom, whatever they have learned in their experience. And I'm sure we all are going to have some sort of takeaways from here. The topic for today's discussion is on the roads to outcomes. I think that's the big hot topic within our industry. And I'm sure when you relate it with your student life as well, that what you are learning versus what you are producing. And I saw a lot of great demos yesterday, and I'm sure most of you, I'm sure not everybody had got a chance to display what they are working on, but somewhere we got that feedback from everyone that okay, focus on value, focus on the outcomes. And I'm sure when you hear from all our panelists, you'll see the true testimony of the people who are day in, day out really working on all of these kind of things that we have learned or heard in last 2 days. So I'll start with our first panelist. I'll start with Ritu Chaudhary. So Ritu is a director in Ubisoft India, leading quality, automation and innovation practices. With 2 decades of experience across fintech and gaming, she is passionate about building high-performing teams, driving meaningful transformations, and nurturing future leaders. Ritu, being please. Just one fact about my personal interaction with Ritu, obviously pretty humble, pretty soft-spoken, and she's like always there whenever we call Ritu that okay, we need your help, and she's always there. So thank you so much, Ritu, for that. Next, I would like to invite Rucha Kapre. So Rucha, with over 15 years of experience in software and product development, she is leader in business analyst and agile methodologies, and currently she has the external DI data team in Springer Nature. A facilitator at heart, Rucha is passionate about making meetings and workshops engaging, creative and truly effective. And I can tell you that Salman ka dialogue hai na, ek baar commitment kar diya to main apne aap ki nahi sunta. That even though she has a fever, but she's still there because she committed for that. So thank you so much, Rucha, for being there. And as always, living up to the commitment. So thank you so much for being there. Next, we have Paresh Chauhan. So he's highly accomplished HR director, Six Sigma Black Belt, over 20 years of global experience, implemented a lot of IT and AI specific initiatives, executed from the global HR's point of view, worked with Gensar and Capgemini. With our short meeting, I mean, before this break and last couple of days, he's a kind of open-hearted person and always open for the feedback, and more of you can have a open discussion with him, and he'll be share his thought process and would be happy to listen us as well. So with that in mind, I think I'll take my place and we'll get into the discussion. So just to set some sort of base and some sort of context, and one line which I can relate with, that great teams don't just do work, they do create the value. And I think in the current era of technology, current era of fast-paced world, we are talking about Agile, we are talking about so many different frameworks where people are into a kind of race, I would say. And in that race of delivery, the race of execution, people are forgetting or missing that value aspect of it. That whatever they are doing for their clients, whatever they are doing for themselves, what is that value they are creating? And I'm sure with Shriram's session, which really opened us a different, I would say, dimension towards value creation, right? What is the value that we bring to ourselves and to our organization? Ultimately, we are going to have a bit of deeper dive into it, how we would stay agile, stay resilient in this current scenario, and how to excel in future. So we'll have a lot of takeaways from there. With that, I'll start with my first question, and where I would love to hear everyone's experience on that. I hope you have mics next to you. The first one I would start with, I'll start with Ritu. So what's driving the shift from traditional role-based execution to outcome-based framework in the current or the modern organization? So what do you think that what are these driving factors?
Sure. Thank you, Manish, for the warm welcome. I would say, I think Since I'm here since lunch, we have been enough talking about value, and that's where the entire conversation is. Today's organizations are not about speed and structure only. You may have maybe 100 people or 1,000 or 1,000,000 people, but it's more about the value and outcome. And that's where, when the demand is more, and how do you bring the competitive advantage, you have to start thinking what is it additional that you are doing outside the value, outside your role, to understand the value that your organization brings. In fact, if we talk about the lowest layer of any organization, do I understand my job? How does it fit to the entire aspect of creating revenue for the organization? That's where we need to start thinking about, and that's where the change starts to happen. Otherwise, honestly, people do their job very well. But if you don't understand the value that I'm bringing, probably there is a gap. And when we start looking at the big picture, it reflects.
Thank you so much, Ritu. Probably, Rucha, if you would like to add from your experience on this.
Sure. Thank you so much. And hello, everyone. A very good afternoon. It's so nice to be in a campus after a very long time. Maybe I'll start with a story because that reminds me of my campus to corporate life. So when I entered, what we were being judged on was the number of lines of code a person wrote. I don't know how relatable it is to people sitting here in the audience, or maybe the number of bugs I found. That was the year-end discussion. So the boundaries were very, very clear. The roles, expectations were very clear. And then, of course, as a dev or a QA, if you were friends with the other person, you did pretty well, right? Because then you could have something in the background going. With Agile, we started focusing a little more on value. So what that essentially means is, if you write a certain number of lines of code to deliver a feature, that's the output. That does not necessarily convert into a good user experience. That's the outcome. So here the outcome is not equal to the output is not equal to the outcome. And that's what shifted. And the world that we are living in, to answer your question, what's driving the shift, I think the world that we're living in is a very VUCA world. It's very volatile. Things are changing. And you've seen, right? Everyone wants quick results. The pace is very fast. It's a very, very complex world. And what is driving this is trends like, AI, the technology that we've been using, and the shift in the world order. Look at the geopolitics. And most importantly, what I feel is driving this change is purpose. So the generation which is now entering in both as a workforce as well as users, they want something which is purposeful. They're not taskmasters. So I think what's thriving is the why without focusing on the how. It's not about what we delivered. It's about what impact did that delivery create. So that's what I think the purpose, the geopolitics, and the generation that is entering is driving this shift, according to me.
Fantastically put. Thank you so much, Rucha. Paresh, if you would like to add from your experience.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. So, see, there are multiple factors which are driving this change. One is how the market is today. Everything is changing very fast. Companies are changing. Plus, what the customer wants is very important today. The experience is very important, which everybody is looking for. If I don't get the experience, I have multiple choice. Right? I will not stick to you. I will go to somebody else. And that is one very big thing which is driving all the change. Second thing is the technology which is available today to everyone. That is leading in a change. And the last one is talent. People who are working, who are looking for their purpose and value out of their work, they are the ones who are also driving the change.
Great points, I think. Yeah, we touched upon on the technology aspect of it, plus other panelists have covered on what's the value of the impact that we are creating. And I'm a big fan of cricket, and maybe something which I can relate to is gone are those days when our Indian cricket team used to be dependent on Sachin, Saurav, Rahul, and VVS Lakshman, right? If they all are out, then we used to drop our shoulders. Now we have lost it, right? And now there's a different altogether Indian team that we see. So somewhere those role batter, you are a batter or you are a bowler, and maybe one or two are the all-rounders. I think that's completely gone, and that's what I see it around. So building just on top of it, I know we all want to transform. We want to transform our organization. We want to transform our teams, but we still do see some sort of struggles with our team to transition. So what do you guys think from your experience? Which are the most critical roadblocks? Maybe if you can touch upon one or two. I'll start with Rucha. What do you think so?
So whatever we spoke about, in the opening discussion sounds very good in theory, right? But in practical, it's a change, and change is always very, very hard. So for example, if my role is defined, I know what would the end goal would be. So there might be some detailed instructions that I need to follow. Versus say my role is not very, very defined, and we're looking at the outcome, things start getting a little fizzy here, right? So in a situation like this, you need to maybe experiment, you need to pivot, and there's no checklist that can guide you. You know what the outcome could be, but you have to go through a process. And when you go through this process, there is a possibility that you might fail. Rather, that's 50% of a possibility that you might fail. And say you fail, and the organizations the culture of the organization is not that great, and they penalize you for that failure. The message that it sends me as an individual is I need to remain in this boundary of mine. And I think that's one of the biggest roadblock as an organization that we need to move away from. But again, the onus is not only on the organization. It's also an individual thing. So to share my story, when I moved to this organization from a previous organization, the culture was, you do as we say, just follow the instructions. So it took me a couple of weeks, to figure out how to work with autonomy. That's also a challenge, right? The person is used to following instructions, and then you put them in an environment where there's a lot of autonomy. It sounds very, very ironic, but imagine I was like, do you really want me to decide what I want to do? Now when I look back, it is very, very funny. But that was the environment, and I felt completely lost. So what is my own drive? And there were a lot of, there was this one manager who really helped, who nudged, who acted as a catalyst. And they gave me that autonomy and also some direction in a way, So I think the biggest roadblock is, as leaders, we intervening, constantly. What we need to understand is giving people that autonomy and a little bit of direction when it's needed. But also, again, shifting back to the organizational perspective, what we say and what we do. If there's a difference between that, then we are not sending a clear message. For example, going back to my previous answer, if you're still rewarding KPIs that are output based, if your whole structure, if your all metric are around output, then also you are sending a wrong message. So that's, I think, a bigger roadblock. You just don't have to think about it in theory. You have to look at it from a very, very holistic perspective.
Great. Ritu, do you want to add something to it?
Yeah, I'll pick up the same theme of culture and add up over here. A lot of time we say that, this is how we have traditionally done. We have got the results. And I believe a lot of you can correlate this. So that's where also problem comes into the picture. Are we actually thinking around, do we understand the pace at which technology is changing? If I give you a very simple example, I'm into gaming, okay, and the pace at which it is changing. We have totally changed from disk to streaming, and now the newer kind of devices that are coming into the market. If we really don't understand how they can complement the world of gaming, how will we start developing or testing such games? How do we make our future workforce ready for what is coming up next? It could be as simple as Zuckerberg launching that device with which, you can sit and the entire theater is in front of you. Do you know how to test that? Do you know how to, start what kind of games can be developed on it? But if you're not having that dialogue, how will you have it? And if you are traditionally doing that, we only come to office and do this and do that and go home and not initiating that dialogue, what additional is required if your culture is not putting those thoughts or encouraging those aspects, probably the change would be very difficult. And then we have seen a lot of organizations getting vanished as well. You would have heard of a lot of stories. Before Netflix, there was a company that they used to buy the disc, and then it actually moved out of the market. But Netflix did something differently, learning how things are changing and then getting adapted, and these days we watch it on TV. It's altogether different than I remember very old times when we used to buy actually the disc and it was home delivered and then we will watch it. So that's where the culture also need to start thinking around.
Great points. I think, one of the takeaways what I see is like not having that open communication between the teams and the so-called traditional hierarchy. But if you are not able to break it, and like Rucha shared that, okay, if we as a leader, if you are not thinking about some outcome-based KPIs rather than having all the discussion on output, I think that's where we lack. And other point is around like the trust that we maintain with our team. So till the time we don't probably add more to our risk appetite as a leader, if you really want to take a shot. And I think yesterday in Vishal's session we were talking about the slice framework, right? If my CEO is not having patience to do this experimentation, which obviously we would, then how that culture of innovation, or how would we come out of this mentality? So that's pretty true. So let's again get more depth into the topic. So how, as a leader and team members, align and measure around these shared outcomes rather than having those individual deliverables and the job titles? What is the traditional model talk about? So how can you do that? Maybe Paresh, with your experience, do you want to share something on that?
So to move towards combined outcomes, right, the first thing is we have to give them some kind of autonomy, the employees. I will just tell you what we are doing in Zensar, so it will make it more clear. So I run a shared services which has 100 plus people. From last year, and we still do appraisals, but appraisals are not linked to their increments. What we did is giving them task was very easy, and individual KRA was very task driven. That okay, you are taking care of US, you do this work. This should be your customer experience score, or this should be your productivity, and it's very easy to drive. But it is very monotonous for an employee. Plus, if they want to change anything, there is nothing for them to do. Right? It's just go ahead and do it. So what we did is we made our KRAs into two parts. 20% is run the business. That is whatever on daily basis they have to do. That is 20%. And 80% is grow the business. Grow the business is where they come up with the idea, they sit together, and for the year, they decide what changes they want to do, what transformation they want to do, and they drive those changes. Right? And that way, we have empowered our employees. So to bring from a transactional outcome to a where there is a group who is driving the change in the company.
Great. Maybe Ritu again, you want to add more to it? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll add a very simple example to this, which will actually help you able to understand. Long back, we were working onto a product. The team was very fantastic. Everybody has been working onto their assigned tasks. The development was going very well. But as soon as we started UAT, we started running into performance management issues. And I'm talking long back before the cloud services came into the picture, and we actually used to host the product onto the server, and there were lot of challenges. Now think about this situation. The team is fantastic. People are outstanding performers, and they have been doing all their work. However, one point that was missing out over there was everybody understanding the big picture on how their work is translating interdepartmental in the same product itself, and taking those conversations and feed also very positively to work it out. That's where I would say it's not only about the outcome or the role that you are performing, but it's also about, do you understand the big picture? Do you have a clarity around how your work is also fitting in to those aspects? So while the development was being done, the testers have raised all the defects, the process has been followed. However, when the product is not able to perform the way it is expected and things are being discussed, there have been design flaws, but that could have always been addressed very early. Shall everybody understands what kind of problems are being faced, and maybe from the development aspect or maybe from the testing team aspect as well, are we thinking those use cases and talking about it enough? That actually adds to the example.
Yeah, maybe when I hear both of you, I also can recall one of the story, and it used to be like when our QA team used to find 500 defects, and they felt proud about it. Hey, I've got 500 defects. Similarly, my dev team used to take pride on that. Okay, hey, I have 1,000 lines of code, like Rucha you were mentioning, right? So one of the days, our program manager comes and he asks that, okay, it's great. My dev team is doing super, my QA team is doing super, but in next release, which is happening after 3 months, I want to reduce this 500 count to 250. I don't care. How do you do that? And I think that time I really realized that value of it is not about only QA, only dev, or only business analyst. It is all about how, as a team, all those. I think that just simple one trigger, that okay, you should start feeling as a team rather than individual roles, taking pride and probably putting it in your appraisals. Hey, we identified so many critical issues, and obviously we remember those days as well, that okay, when our appraisal were on based off okay, what was your output, rather than as a team, even if we failed, we could not deliver our releases on time, nobody used to really care about it. And that trigger, that one incident really triggered that okay, no, I need to start thinking about as a team. And then the team dynamics, all those coordination, the cohesiveness, where we were fighting each other, and all of a sudden it was like, guys, I do understand your pain, my pain, so let's share together, and then probably we can reduce this pain. So that's what happened.
That's so true. Just to add to it, and this factor of the number of lines of code is so irrelevant now in the age of AI, because you can generate as many lines of code, and if you are measuring people still on that, it's never going to help. What is essential is, as you mentioned, team owning it, you acting as the owner of the product or the service together, and then you might be able to take better decisions and not just stuck to your role that this is my
Absolutely.
job, I do it, and then I go back. But if you have like a shared purpose or a vision with respect to that product, it's not like stepping on each other's toes for sure, but then as a team you have like the North Star, and then you work towards it basically, and then you'll do whatever it takes to get there.
True, absolutely. And I think when we started getting into this agile way of working, and then we started maybe realizing that okay, hey, there is a shared sprint goal that we need to deliver at the end. Now, how as a team we need to work together so that we can all deliver and feel proud about that. And I think that was the key transformation, or that one statement, of whether it was not in form of a KPI, but we took it as the measuring parameter and really helped us and transform the things together. Taking it to more of autonomy, because we all discussed about it, and it's pretty favorite topic of all the leaders. I want to give autonomy, but I want to twist the question and just want to ask our leaders over here that okay, what is that single hardest thing a leader has to stop doing to enable the autonomy? So maybe I put first on to Ritu on that. What do you think?
Stop answering everything. As a parent, as a leader, stop answering and like feeding too much of things. Let your people fail. Make your system so supportive so that you know you are there and you can help them out when required. But let people experiment. You know what kind of things need a super escalation and what kind of things can work it out. And people may have different ways of working. just give them a freedom. And the second thing is trust. Don't make it a habit. My trust has to be earned. Everybody has good intentions. Start with the thought of trust. I trust everybody. Let them work it out. have your governance built in such a way so you know when you have to step in. But trust that people with good intentions, they will work it out. And please stop answering all the questions. Let people explore. Let the thought process develop. Let them think around. In the world of AI, it's very difficult. Because everything is so much available at a click, or just open the mobile and everything is available. So let people figure out a way. How do they think? Let them develop that. So that's where I would again say, stop answering.
Thanks,
Stop
Ritu.
this.
Rucha, do you want to add more to it on this side?
Yeah, maybe I can build on what Ritu mentioned. It reminds me of a story. When I joined the organization I'm in right now, my very first manager, I felt he did nothing. For the first 2-3 weeks, I was like, what is this person doing? Never ever, intervenes. Maybe he's not even doing his job well, because he's not giving me any instructions. He's not telling me what to do. He's not even like intervening. And then over a period of time, I realized the kind of leadership tactic that he was using on us. So I think that's my answer as well. Stop intervening. It's okay. What's the worst that could happen, right? It's going to fail. How many of us are afraid of failure? I see a lot of hands, and it's completely fine. And in the same organization, we build a culture which is called as fail forward, where it's okay to fail. We even come out and share our failure stories, because a sane person will also learn from others' failures. You don't have to fail yourself to learn. And then leaders coming and talking about their own failures. I think that's quite important as well, because the world that we live in, it's so complex. A leader can never be know-it-all. Never. And hence, if the leader comes out and talks about, hey, this was my failure and this is what I did, that also creates that vulnerability and that creates that trust among people. So that's the initiative we build on. And what it also helps is, if you're not penalizing people when they fail, that's where innovation happens. Innovation does not necessarily happen in a lab. If you're creating that environment, it will work. So I would say the biggest roadblock is stop intervening, give people that autonomy. The style of leadership you might pick is something called as, situational leadership, where sometimes you have to direct people, sometimes you have to coach them, sometimes you might just delegate something, and delegate with autonomy, like don't constantly intervene. And there's a wonderful framework I came through in one of Vishal's podcast, Enterprise Joy podcast, which was called as RERA. Even if you're delegating something, ensure you're giving that person all the information. Ensure you are setting them up for success. Set up a cadence as well, where there are touch points. Like, just don't leave them by themselves. So for me, that's the biggest roadblock. One is intervening. And second, and sorry, I'm getting a little greedy here. The second is tell the why, not the how. I think that's very, very important. Let people figure out the how. If they fail, I think it's just looping back to the answer that I gave. It's completely okay. They might come up with a new way of doing things. You never know.
Absolutely. And I think maybe one example which I can relate with is Abhishek Sharma. Don't tell him that, okay, not to blast from the first ball of the match. Let him be natural. We know that, okay, processes are there and guardrails are there, but sometimes it is okay, even if he's blasting from the first ball of the match. Maybe he may get out also. That's okay. But he can turn around the things. So like you said, okay, don't intervene, or let them fail and they'll learn from it. And we know probably what kind of impact that players can make if you provide enough of autonomy. So that's great.
If I may,
Yeah, please.
I tell my team also a lot. It's very difficult to let go of the control, because you know how you have done it for years. It's really very difficult. But trust your team. Nobody comes to office in the morning with a thought process of, I'll waste the entire day and I'll fail. Nobody comes with this thought process. So people are always putting in their best efforts. So trust their potential. Guide them where required. But don't be like too much trying to change their style. So that's where try to figure out how you have to balance or work it out.
Absolutely. I think people rightly said it, fail is your first attempt in learning.
Yeah.
So I think that's all about. Okay. So I think with this transformation, the one very important aspect is this cross skilling. and probably no better than our HR panelist can talk about it and can share what people think about it when our organization trying to nurture those people. But sometimes it becomes so difficult that people start looking at it as a kind of headache, overhead, or people are really not able to bring that versatility or flexibility, I would say, with those kind of exercises. So how do we really drive such exercises so that people feel comfortable and there is a corresponding business outcome as well?
So, one is gone are the old days where your structure was a team where you had only one skill and you had some more over the top skill for communication and others, and people used to just move on. Now we are in a world where people don't only need one skill, they need multiple skills, right? We are moving from T to Pi and now to E and everything is. So we have to reinforce the skills in the people. Now this can only be done if it is driven from top down, right? If you only tell people to learn, nobody will learn. So how generally it works in a good way is that one is you have to incentivize their training in some way, right? Some either it is made mandatory, plus there is an incentive to training. Trainings are linked to performance. Then other things where people get cross-trained and really work upon is they need to learn and apply that training into their work, right? Without application of those trainings into work, it doesn't work. Then you have to give them autonomy to apply everything. Otherwise, just learning, it never helps. I will give you one or two examples. There was a company in China, or still is, name is Here. Okay? One of the biggest manufacturers of fridge that point of time. They went into losses in a big way, and they brought in a new CEO. What he did was he divided the company into 4,000 individual units, and each individual unit became a profit center, and each individual unit has to perform as a company, right? There, everybody learned new things. It was made mandatory, and then they developed multiple products. And till 2000, from 2009 till 2023, they were the highest revenue company for goods. Now they are one of the top most sellers for IoT products in the world. So they have done this way, where skilling and reskilling has helped them to gain. One more example is from shared services, where you have different skilled people, but say for an IT company, IT service shared services there, where some people work on network, some people work on normal escalations, right? Now, if these people are not cross-trained, what happens is, network problems is rare, but when it happens, then you need a lot of people to close it. If you cross-train them, then network people, when they are not having any issues, they can work upon the normal service tickets, and otherwise, when network issues are there, they will work on the network and others can also solve them. So until unless this is not happening, then you're wasting manpower, and plus there is no learning.
Absolutely. I think we have touched upon a great point that, okay, whatever we are learning, whether we are able to implement it as well. Because somewhere during my experience also, I felt that, okay, there's a big disconnect between L&D and the business. So L&D is running their own show in silo. They have their list of trainings. Okay, we have to get people trained. Business is running their priorities completely differently. And somewhere, if both of these people, right, they are the customer for each other, and ultimately they don't come together and really build a training plan which you can really deliver or implement somewhere maybe in 3 months down the line to the client, and client would see the value of it, where maybe it could be a productivity improvement, or whether in terms of maybe you can, even some of the cases where I've seen that, okay, people get trained and you improve the billing as well. If it is a $20, they take it to $30 because now my person is certified on a certain skill. So somewhere if we are able to bridge those two things and learn it, and I think like you shared the here example that we can come out with a lot of great products and help the business to build it.
So what you said about LND is right. Most of the companies I have worked for, they are after only completion of numbers of hours they have closed, right? So application of learning is more important than number of hours.
True. Perfect. So let me take to probably a bit difficult one, and I'll request Procha first to share some details around it. Like what differentiate team that adapt and grow under pressure from those that simply cope or collapse? So what are those differentiators? What do you feel?
I feel the biggest differentiator is the ability to bounce back. And that reminds me of those inflated toys. I don't know if I don't remember seeing them anymore, but you hit the toy and then it bounces back. I think that's the biggest differentiator for an individual as well as a team, is to have that kind of resilience. And if there's one skill that I have to develop, I would pick resilience as that skill. In fact, in the organization that I work for, leaders are being trained in resilience for many years now, because the world is getting so complex that, and I strongly believe that your reactions determine the outcome. The situation doesn't. How you react to the situation will determine the outcome. Situations are going to be complex in the world that we live in. You can't control that. You absolutely have no control over it. But how you react to those situations is in your control. And an example that I can think of is, how do you build that resilience muscle? Is there's a dialogue in one of the movies, and sorry, I'm going to quote it directly, is that पूरी दुनिया में कारपेट नहीं बिछा सकते हो, तुम खुद चप्पल पहन के चलो, right? Loosely translated, it's like you can't lay a carpet in the entire world. You need to wear your own shoes or chappals, and that's resilience. You can't buy it, of course. You have to build that muscle, but that's what is the biggest differentiator: the ability to bounce back as an individual and as a team.
Superb. Yeah, Ritu, do you want to add more from your thought process around it?
I'll go with resilience only as the main important factor. When we look at high performing teams, what is it that differentiates them is the resilience, the ability to work it out together, and most importantly, the thought process of continuous learning over perfection. You know that you are continuously learning and you have that kind of a trust within the team as well, that it's okay. I mean, you did certain things, maybe with the changing technology landscape, you were working onto a product, it did not work. It's not a question mark onto the credibility of the person. It is about you understood one thing, how things don't work. So how do you create that kind of an environment in the team that people are open to talk about it and bounce back with the same enthusiasm in the team?
Great. I think absolutely. You touched upon probably one point which I want to pick it as on the mindset part from both the talks. And I always believed in it is all about 90% attitude and 10% mechanics.
Right.
So even though all those processes, all those technologies, whatever we are learning, that's 10%. These are the mechanics. But until unless that 90% of attitude or the mindset, if we don't have it, ultimately the collapse is the only thing where the team can get into. So that's my take on that. With that, probably I would like to conclude on now all these transformations have happened and things are going good. Now the bigger challenge comes after the transformation, that how do we sustain this agility and this outcome driven model or the thinking that we have imbibed in each and every one, whether it is leader or a teammates. So maybe one tip from all of you that okay, with this kind of transformation, how do we really sustain it? So anything, maybe Paresh, you would like to share one tip for the audience?
Leaders should check whether the team are working autonomously or not. Right? They should always do a dipstick check that everybody is working autonomously or not. If they are dependent on somebody to give them direction, then this autonomy and outcome-based thinking, they should align to companies' goals and just move on it. They should not need leader at every step telling them what.
Okay, so autonomy is probably one word which I picked from this. Ritu, anything from yours? One line.
Live the values that you talk. So you should not be different on face or otherwise. Live the value the way you talk. It's very difficult because you will always have the temptation to guide and nurture the team. But at times, if you don't get into it and you actually live the way you talk, it will make life easy.
Great. Rocha?
I would say live creating safe spaces in practical rather than theory. You know, for you to sustain and move forward, people need to innovate. For that, you need to provide safe spaces. Everything is connected, right? You need to be resilient yourself. The organization needs to provide those spaces to innovate, and only then you can move forward, because what works now might not work in even a few months, forget few years, because degradation is always at play. So you have to keep reinventing yourself, your processes. So that would be like innovation and safe spaces for me.
Great. So I asked for one, but you have given two, so I'll also take two. So I as a moderator, I take that liberty. So from my side, with all the discussion, whatever I heard, maybe one most recent example, which we have also read in our newspaper, that Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli are being asked to play domestic cricket if they want to be part of the international cricket. So somewhere all those leaders, right, if they are not going through the same path, how can they ask their teams to follow the same path? So lead by example, I think that's one of the ways where the transformation, that if leader is not living that transformation, then how do you expect your team to live that transformation? And second thing is, I always quote this 3-letter, which is BCD, like B is for birth, D is for death, and C is the choice. And that choice which you always have, that okay, do you want to move back to your earlier way of working, or really do you want to focus on the outcomes? So if we keep that choice, keep that change within us, and I think then there is no limits. So with that,